Welcome, everyone. We're going to get started in a minute. Thank you for being here for local news teaching with Storm Lake. We're going to give folks a couple more minutes to join, so hang tight. We're happy to have you. In the meantime, go ahead and add in the chat where you're from, anything else you want to share about yourself, what you teach, what you're excited about for tonight. Any of the above. Dani teaches science and math. That's great. Okay, we have Ivy from Iowa City. Welcome. Librarian joining from Cleveland. Mandy, welcome. Welcome, everyone. It's so great to have you here. Teaching with Storm Lake. We're getting ready to get started. We can go ahead. So welcome to tonight's presentation, Local News Teaching with Storm Lake. This is a very special NewsLit Nation event, using this award-winning documentary to share the power of independent and local journalism with your students. We want to give a shout out to Microsoft for making the event possible, and also to every single educator out there, because you are on the front line of facts and learning and student empowerment, and we want to do everything we can to support you in this role. So a little bit about the News Literacy Project. We're a nonpartisan national education nonprofit, and we're providing programs and resources for educators as well as the general public to learn, teach, and share the skills you need to be active consumers of news, to be able to tell fact from fiction, and to be civically engaged in our democracy. As you may have noticed in the messaging we've sent out, this is an exclusive NewsLit Nation event. So if you're new to the News Literacy Project or NewsLit Nation, let me share this. NewsLit Nation is our national community of educators, and it's also our central hub for all of your news literacy curriculum needs. So go to newslit.org, click on For Educators, and that is where you will find all of our free educator tools. It's where everything lives, our professional learning opportunities. You're going to gain access to our news literacy ambassadors across the country, any kind of webinars and special things we have going on. And speaking of news literacy ambassadors, you'll get to meet Iowa's News Literacy Ambassador tonight, so stay tuned for Jill. You also get to receive the monthly Insider newsletter and also benefit from exclusive perks like this one tonight. So thank you so much. If you know a fellow educator that hasn't joined NewsLit Nation, or if you somehow got the link and didn't join yet, we welcome you too. And I hope you do. Just go to newslit.org, click on For Educators, and that'll take you to NewsLit Nation. And then you can just click on the register icon on the upper right of the screen. So tonight we are very excited to be joined today by Peabody nominated director Beth Levison. And Jerry Risius can't join us tonight, sadly, but we do want to mention him. So the Peabody nomination apparently is breaking news. So we're really excited to have this happening tonight. We're also joined by Pulitzer Prize winning Storm Lake Times editor, Art Cullen. Hello, Art, welcome. And we have the News Literacy Project's News Literacy Ambassador, who is also a teacher librarian at West High School in Iowa City, Jill Hofmockel. Hello, Jill, nice to have you. And also our very own News Literacy Project Senior Manager of Education and Content, Pamela Brunskill. Hi, Pam. And I am your host for the evening, Miriam Romais, and I am NLP's Senior Manager of Educator Engagement. So to get things started, we don't want to keep you waiting too long. We're going to go ahead and show a little snippet of the Storm Lake to see what you're in for. And hopefully you'll be able to view this. Yep, here we go.
In a small northwest Iowa town, the Storm Lake Times weaves the fabric of the community in large ways and small. Yeah.
Right.
We're on deadline, we're ready to put it on the page.
I get real uptight about deadlines.
Readers decide our future, not any branch of government.
We have happy stories about all types of people.
You're a singing star.
Most people in Storm Lake care about community.
Hey guys!
But how long does a community support journalism? Because now people want to get their news for free, and people are saying, oh, well, that's not worth $1. And that's not how you sustain a democracy. We've always operated at the break-even point. $7.
Mom and pop stores that were the basis of our advertising are gone.
How else do you make a small community survive?
All the meatpacking plants are infected with COVID.
No one's even talking about testing at this point.
How sickening it is forcing immigrant workers into a deadly workplace. And to me, there are blatant forms of racism and there are subtler forms of racism, but it's racism all the same.
We were the first ones to say a number of Tyson employees tested positive. And then there was this dramatic spike, and it was unbelievable. We're continuing to report on the numbers as best we can.
Now, Storm Lake is the hottest spot in the country.
It's been a pretty stressful time, and we're losing money, and there ain't a thing you can do about it.
Our ads fell off a cliff.
It doesn't make a lot of sense to go borrow money when we could just walk away from it now.
You can change the world through journalism. The reporter is the cornerstone in a functioning democracy. And without strong local journalism, the fabric of the place becomes frayed.
The prospect of the newspaper not being around terrifies me.
So if we do the right things here, we'll be all right.
So let's get that story.
Had to unmute myself. Here we go. That was amazing. Thank you. Okay, so we're going to dive right in with a few questions, and we're going to start with a question to all panelists. What makes Storm Lake so important?
Well, I'll start, since I'm from Storm Lake. What makes it so important to me is it saved our newspaper from closing. And it saved, probably, there was another newspaper in town and it was about to go under as well. And we just merged them just last week. And because of this movie, it wouldn't have been possible were it not for this movie. And so that's what it means to me personally, is it's delivered me from purgatory. And what it means, I think, to educators and to America is just what the trailer referred to, that the news business is under assault from within and without. And the former president of the United States called us an enemy of the people. Circulation's been plummeting in both daily and community newspapers for years. And we think we've hit bottom, and it's movies like this that point out how important journalism is to democracy, and to if you don't understand it, look at Ukraine and Russia right now. Look at what's happening in Russia. And this is what that movie illustrates. This is what you lose.
All right, anyone else?
I can piggyback off of that. I was so excited to watch this film when it came out, and it didn't disappoint. It demonstrates the role that news plays in people's lives in a community, the life of a community, the heart, the lifeblood, right? And also it highlights, from a news literacy perspective, the role that a standards-based news organization plays in a robust democracy. I know, Art, you made a comment in the film about how people want to get their news for free these days, and so they turn to social media, and we all know what happens when people can't understand the difference between a meme that's just pulled out of the air versus fact-based and standards-based journalism. So I think this film just really highlights the struggle that news organizations are facing these days, but also how important it is.
And I guess I'd just like to add one thing that was something that we attempted to do in making the movie was Storm Lake. In making the movie Storm Lake, what we really wanted to convey is that the struggle that the Storm Lake Times was facing, and also the value it was bringing to its community, was and is not unique to Storm Lake alone. We were hoping to tell a story that really resonated beyond Storm Lake and that speaks for communities and newspapers across the country. So, as storytellers, we like to go deep into a story, and hopefully by going deep, it can almost apply more universally. And so, we really hope, Jerry and I, the filmmakers and the whole team, we really hope that the film encourages not just educators, but any viewers to think about news in their own community and the role that it plays. And I guess I'll just say the one thing that I learned making this film, and I learned this from Art, in the early days of making the film, Art would say, a newspaper is only as strong as its community, and a community is only as strong as its newspaper. And in the early days of filming, to be quite honest, I really did not understand that relationship. And as we kept on filming, then I really got it. And so we just hope that kind of comes through for whoever sees it, and that they value the news that they have in a new way.
Well, this is a great segue for the question, Beth. So your ultimate wish and hope for this film. Tell us a little bit about that.
That is a great question. I guess at this moment, it really is to encourage people to value the news in their communities. And for young people, we certainly hope that it increases news literacy nationwide. I have 2 teenagers, and they do go to their social feeds, and I'm trying to get them to think about credible news more and pursue it. And so, our hope is that my greatest wish is that it increases news literacy, gets people to value their local news, and that it encourages people to think about that relationship between credible local news in a community and a functioning democracy, because as we've already said, you just won't have a functioning democracy without that local credible news.
And what was the inspiration for making the film? Like, how did this come about? Like, let's make a documentary about a newspaper.
Yeah. So I'm one half of the directing duo. My directing partner on this film is Jerry Risius, who is also the film cinematographer. And Jerry grew up on a small farm in Iowa and is also a real news hound and really pays attention to what's going on in the news. And in 2017, he saw that Art and the Storm Lake Times won a Pulitzer. And he describes it as his Linda Blair moment, that his head went spinning around in 360 degrees. How did this happen? Small newspapers like the Storm Lake Times are not normally the Pulitzer Prize winners. So Jerry was visiting his family in Iowa in a town called Buffalo Center, and used that as a chance to film for an afternoon with Art, and really thought there might be a story there. Actually, Jerry and I are also educators. We teach at the School for Visual Arts in New York City in the MFA program in the film department, and we had always wanted to work together. And Jerry had never, he had filmed many incredible films as a cinematographer, but had never taken a film from A to Z. And so he reached out to me, and I was not available in 2017, although we kept on talking. And then in 2018, Art wrote an article, a guest editorial for the New York Times called "In My Town, We Need Immigrants." And Jerry said, "Hey, did you have a chance to read that and see that?" And I read this editorial, and it really blew my mind. And my schedule happened to be opening, and I said, "Jerry, let's do it." And that was kind of the beginning. And by August of 2018, we were hard at it and trying to raise money and get this film off the ground. And we're so happy to be where we are now with a finished film and having the opportunity for impact such as this. So it's a real dream come true.
Now, the intention originally was, oh, okay, Pulitzer Prize, congratulations, Art. Let's go ahead and make this movie. But what were the aha moments along the way?
I would say for me, one of the really wonderful aha moments was, I think that I had this notion that a local news operation is something sleepy and slow. And we, from day one, it was so vital and so alive, and there was so much happening every day. And we were a very small team. And sometimes we would tell our assistant camera person or our sound woman, we would say, "Oh, you don't have to join us. It's going to be a slow morning," because we knew we would go late. "It'll be slow. We'll just, we'll just go in and see what's happening." And inevitably there were sort of stories breaking left and right. So it really challenged my notions of what a local newspaper does, how active it can be, and how much is going on in communities that we don't realize when it's not reported. So I think that was a huge aha moment. And then understanding this relationship between a community and its newspaper, and how the health of each depends on the other. And then it sort of, mushrooms from there, the aha moments, like understanding the relationship between a credible newspaper and a healthy democracy. So those are some of the aha moments.
Fantastic, thank you. So Art, I'm curious to hear, what does it mean to you now to have this film, not only about the family paper, but being used as a teaching tool, right?
Well, it's kind of unfathomable to me at first. When I first saw the movie on the big screen in Vermont, actually, I was on tour. I was just overwhelmed, And here they're talking about, it's going to be in these classrooms across the country, and it's just, I can't get my head around it. And but one thing I know is that we need civics instruction in America. And I know they're making some real progress in Chicago. And, when I was in school in Iowa, and I think there's some Iowans aboard tonight, we all had to take civics, and I don't think you do anymore. And there's a reason for ignorance. And it's because we aren't teaching them what the First Amendment means. And so that's what it means to me for educators, is it's a real opportunity to, when you see people scaling the walls of the US Capitol, it's time that we teach our children a little bit about representative democracy and the rule of law.
Yeah, thank you. How did you get into journalism? Can you talk a little bit about oh, here's a story. Okay. The public
I flunked
service
accounting. That's how I
aspect.
got into journalism. So
How?
I got stoned and looked at the college catalog and looked, what's the easiest major at St. Thomas up in St. Paul, Minnesota? And
Noted.
the only requirement was that you had to type 25 words a minute. And my mom could never understand why I took high school typing classes, because I was going to be an orthodontist or a US senator. And well, anyway, being able to type 25 words a minute qualified me to join the St. Thomas Journalism School. And that's how I got into journalism. And my big brother, John, who's a star of the movie, had a job at a newspaper and landed me a job when I was otherwise unemployable. So the C students do turn out after all.
Well, it's an interesting thing though, because it became a passion of yours, right? Like, can you talk a little bit about like the public service part of this, right? I think there's this perception that, oh, newspapers, right? Like they're in
Well, it was
for the
Watergate.
profit, but
I was in the first post-Watergate class. And so, we were telling ourselves, and I think it's true, that CBS News stopped the Vietnam War. And by bringing it into our living rooms and exposing William Westmoreland's fabrications about death counts in Vietnam, and CBS News and newspapers ended the Vietnam War. And they brought down Richard Nixon, who was a corrupt criminal. And in my opinion, I think validated by history. And that's how I became passionate about it. And I worked with my brother, who was very good, and he taught me a lot. He taught me more than I ever learned in journalism school and on the job. And, we're Irish, and we were born with an ability to write. And so there's a guardian angel sitting on my shoulder, and he directed me in that dorm room that night to get into something that looked easy. And it is easy, and it's fun. And that's why it's fun, is because it's easy, because I can write, and I have a gift. And so I have a guardian angel.
so glad you're sharing your gift. You had mentioned an Iowa town will be as strong as its newspaper and its banks. Can you tell us a little bit about what you meant by that?
Yeah, actually, that's a saying I stole from Michael Gartner, who also is an Iowa editor. He used to edit the Des Moines Register, won a Pulitzer Prize at the Ames Tribune for editorial writing. And he was kind of a mentor of mine. And he explained that to me, that it's in a small town, it's really a bank and a newspaper that kind of hold the town together, that the newspaper lets everybody know what's going on, and the bank is giving people making loans, and helping new businesses start. Good community banks are doing that. And that if you look at any Iowa town, and I think, Jill, you would agree with this, that if there's a strong locally owned bank and a really strong newspaper, that community probably looks pretty healthy. The paint isn't peeling quite as much. And it just rings true wherever I go. If you look at the strongest newspapers in the country right now are independently owned newspapers. The New York Times, the Washington Post, the Minneapolis Star Tribune, the Boston Globe, and the Seattle Times are all unqualified success stories, and they're all locally owned. And each of those cities is a major center in and of itself, with people who don't just have the keys to the door, they're actual owners. And whether it's Cargill in Minneapolis, or Microsoft in Seattle. So that's what really makes communities thrive, is local ownership and local stakeholders.
Right. And the trust that you build as well, right, with the community.
And the
So
reason that the Seattle Times was able to start a foundation that's so successful is because of Microsoft, in large part. You know, they're a big donor to the Seattle Times Investigative Journalism Fund. It's because Microsoft is in Seattle and cares about Seattle. And so does Frank Blethyn, the owner of the Seattle Times. And I'm sorry I interrupted.
No, that's fine. And you mentioned Microsoft, which is making this event right now possible. So that's okay.
Right. That was intentional.
Yeah. Okay. We do have a couple of questions coming in. James wants to know, how did the movie save the two newspapers? And like, I was thinking also the Pulitzer Prize, how like it probably originated a little bit with that as well, because that brought the attention, right, of the directors and whatnot. So
yeah, this is a really crazy story. And when I talked about a guardian angel, again, I'm Irish. I'm somewhat of a mystic, all right? And so Jerry Risius calls out of the blue and says, "Hey, can I make a movie about you?" "Sure, come on, make a movie," you know. Well, how I won a Pulitzer Prize is it was Sunday and they were going to announce it on Monday. And I asked Dolores, my wife, if she'd give me a haircut because I think I'm going to win a Pulitzer Prize tomorrow. And I just had this inkling that I was going to win. And sure as hell, they got to number 18. They were going, Peggy Noonan of the Wall Street Journal, and you know, big shot after big shot. And then they get to number 18 editorial writing and they say Art Cullen from the Storm Lake Times. You know? Crazy, crazy stuff. St. John Bosco is the patron saint of editors and pressmen, by the way. And then, you know, so Jerry Risius calls. That's a crazy deal. You know, can I come and make a movie? And then he makes this movie and with Beth, and I'm doing a show, an interview on NPR's Fresh Air. And this guy hears it in California about the movie. And he's a tech maven and a Chinese immigrant. And he emailed me. We were touring with the movie, and I got to my hotel room in Detroit at midnight and checked the email. And it's from John Tu, T-U. And he said, you know, I heard your story and I want to make sure you don't go broke. And so I want to send you money. And he did. He kept us alive through the pandemic, along with the PPP and the Western Iowa Journalism Foundation, which we founded to help fund rural newspapers, family-owned independent newspapers. Mm. So he bailed us out. Then the movie went to Los Angeles and there was a screening there, and he showed up for the screening and he'd already given us this money. And he said, "You know, Art, I really want to help you." And in typical Iowa fashion, I said, "Oh, no, you can't, you know, I couldn't ask for a penny more." And he said, "No, really, I want to help you." And so he said, "Give me a plan." And a few days later, I got a call from this friend of mine. He said, "I want to buy these Northwest Iowa newspapers, including the Storm Lake Pilot Tribune and the Cherokee Chronicle, and I'd like to sell them off to you." And I said, "Okay, but I don't have any money." And he said, "Well, find some." And so I went and contacted John Tu, and I said, "Will you support us if we do this?" And he said, "Just don't worry about it, just do it. And I'll be there." And so we did. And on April 1st, we hired all the employees of the Storm Lake Pilot Tribune, and we gave them all a raise. Anybody who wanted to come over with us, we all but one did. And we gave them all a raise, and we just put out our first 2-section paper in years. And it's all because of this movie. It would not have happened. John Tu would have never called were it not for this movie. And hearing it on NPR, and he just said that you know, he he fled mainland China with Chiang Kai-shek, went to Taiwan, didn't like either environment, and wanted in the worst way to be free. And he got to the US finally after a long circuitous route through Germany. And he said, I just want to make sure that I can support democracy. That's his only desire. Incredible story.
Amazing.
And so I should go to church more often. I really should.
All right, we have another question. This one is from Danielle. I feel like I need to say she's my cousin in California. As we see more and more people entrenched into their own views and opinions about news and news sources, what suggestions does the panel have for teachers to ensure students are equipped to recognize facts from fake news? Good question. Panel.
I can start from NLP's perspective, right? It's the idea that we teach our students in the next generation to become news literate. And if we can teach them the difference between a news source and an opinion source, if we can teach them to identify a credible source or a credible piece of information from a non-credible, bogus, viral rumor, right? Then they will have the tools. If students know how to lateral read, checking what various websites to identify, if they see a claim that just seems outlandish, let's look at what other sites are saying about that claim. And we were going to look at credible news sources though, right? And then they will be equipped to identify, what is fact and what is fiction.
And I'll piggyback on that just a little bit too. And it was one of the things that I wanted to make sure that I said when it was my turn to talk tonight. And that is that I think that the timing of this curriculum guide that Pamela and Miriam and their team have developed, and the placement of this documentary into classrooms or making it available to classrooms is absolutely perfectly timed because of all of the things that Danielle said in her question and that Pamela has said just now. Teenagers are, I've been a high school teacher for more than 20 years, and teenagers are not known to be super outward looking. They're a little more focused in, right? And so, kids right now have this kind of weird dichotomy of being like wholly separate from the news, but also just like awash in it at all times because of their, their constant social media. And that skill for digital natives to kind of both be simultaneously like skeptical and not immediately falling for everything, but also falling for everything is a real turning point in education right now. And as a teacher librarian, that's like my number one goal. And anytime that I have an opportunity to collaborate and teach with my colleagues that are classroom teachers, that's absolutely at the forefront for me, is helping kids become much more purposeful consumers of information. And there is, as Art kind of alluded to earlier, there's this narrative that's pretty real, I think, that media is not to be trusted, right? That's been sown and it's growing, and it's a real competitor with news literacy and information literacy. And so it's important for kids to get those skills. And that's exactly what I think is the strength of this curriculum and some of the things that it does. And we'll kind of save that bit for sort of the second half of the panel.
Thank you, Jill. Yeah, that kind of wraps it up. Because also, right, your circulation is about about 3,000 readers. You're publishing twice a week, and you're working in an environment where, according to the film, right, 1 in 4 papers have shut their doors in the past 10, 15 years, right? So you're trying to hold strong. and you're trying to preserve this and inform everyone accurately.
Trying.
Yeah. So how do we get to the point where the community, right? Like there's this bridge between what you do as journalists and the community. How do you further build that trust? I loved seeing the collaboration with La Prensa and other local places, right? Like there's unity in numbers sometimes, but
well, yeah, actually, you know, I think Trump did us a favor to a certain extent in waking up the public to the threat to democracy. And I mean, we'll see how it all turns out, but it's very clear from the middle of the country in Iowa that an insurrection occurred, and it was driven by Donald Trump. And people, I think, before and after the election, turned to newspapers in record numbers. The New York Times now has more reader revenue than it does advertising revenue. Think about that for a second. That's huge. And the Washington Post had similar gains. They've been involved in a very heated newspaper war that's produced some of the best journalism in the history of this country. And also during the pandemic, people, I think, started to wake up to the fact that they really needed credible information that was vetted about the coronavirus, about testing and vaccines and all that stuff. And that wasn't necessarily in the hothouse of CNN or, you know, the other cable news networks, so-called news networks. And so we saw circulation increase across the country. It's leveled off since then, but I think it's probably picking up now again in the midst of this Ukraine war. And I think people have become saturated with the BS. And I think they're realizing that they need something sturdy they can hold on to.
Yeah, thank you. So we're going to kind of switch gears a little bit and glide right into a bit of the teaching guide, right? Because we're trying to support our educators and being able to take this information into their classrooms. Beth, you raised your finger. Did you have a question? Or did you want to add to that?
No, I guess since we're moving into the next section, I was wondering if this might be a good juncture for me to slip away, if that is okay. Yeah, but I just wanted to, whoever's watching, whoever's listening, thank you so much. Thank you, News Literacy Project. Thank you, Microsoft. Thank you, Art. Thank you, educators, for using the film. We really want it to have impact. We want it to impact the next generation of readers and news hounds and journalists and civilians. And we're just really happy that this is happening. So thank you so much. Yeah.
Give Henry a birthday kiss for me.
It's my husband's birthday.
Give Henry a birthday kiss for me.
I will.
Okay.
Thank you, everybody.
The film is lovely, Beth.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you for all the work all of you have put out into this and all the work that all of you will put into this. So thank you.
What a joy.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. So, all right. So we're going to segue. It was so moving. All right. We're going to segue right into Pam and Jill and talk a little bit about the guide. But I do want to mention something from Susan. Susan mentioned, thank you so much for doing this. Local news is more important than most folks realize. And for Art, could you please comment on the steps you take in and around publishing to assure public trust to incite renewed interest in local news? Are you doing anything in particular to grow subscribers? I'm sure you are. We're starting to run out of time, so I'll give you 30 seconds.
What we're trying to do to restore, to enhance trust with readers is the same thing we've been doing ever since time immemorial, and that is, checking with more than one source, calling the source directly on the telephone, or better yet, face to face. And that's how you do it, basic blocking and tackling. And that's the only way we know how. And eventually we just have to hope that people will turn to credible institutions, whether it's the Supreme Court or the Fourth Estate, and that we can all embrace democracy again.
Yeah, thank you. All right, so speaking about embracing democracy, let's go ahead and move right into the curriculum guide. Pam, tell us a little bit about the curriculum guide and why is it important to have something like this to accompany such a film?
Sure. So when we first reviewed the film, we immediately saw how news literacy rich it was and wanted to explore how to bring it into the classroom. We collaborated with Rebecca Fortner on the guide, as she's a former reporter in a small market and now a classroom teacher, so to incorporate her insights. And then we made a classroom 60-minute cut in order to, fit into 3 20-minute sections for students, because as a former educator myself, I know I would either make it, I liked having shorter segments so that we could have time for discussion and to pause the film and discuss as it's happening. But then again, of course, you also need the questions and activities to support a film at the same time. So Shailene, if you want to move the slide along a little bit. The Storm Lake curriculum guide serves as a map for teachers and students to accompany the PBS documentary, so they can better understand the role that news plays in our community and democracy. It focuses on essential questions, gives students previewing activities, during activities, and then post-viewing activities. So let's go to the, I'm going to speak pretty fast so that, because I know we're short on time. And here I have an example of one of our previewing activities, which is the Essential Questions Graphic Organizer. It focuses on 3 big questions. What is news? What role does news play in a community? And is news important in a democracy? Why or why not? And these 3 big questions we repeat throughout, the film, and then of course at the end we revisit. There's also an anticipation guide that asks students to consider their engagement with news, as well as how they evaluate news in their community, so they can get a test of a pH level, right? Of how are they already engaging with news. And then we can go to the next slide. This is just a little bit more of the anticipation guide, right? Where they're keeping track of where they're getting information from TV, print, or radio, or social media, to really just take a sample. So during viewing, we will go, and it includes entrance and exit tickets, as well as discussion questions that can be completed as assigned individually in small groups or as a whole class instruction. Yep, and then I'm just giving you a preview of the guide, but you'll all have access to it very soon. And this during viewing portion, you can see these like the entrance tickets. You can print out, give them to the students, or else there's also a editable student version that's in this guide that you can make a copy. And then if there are questions you want to expand upon, you can add. If there are questions you don't want to get into, you can delete, right? You're going to tweak it and make it relevant for your classroom. So let's move on. Next slide. Yep, here's a zoom in of the entrance ticket, right? So what is the difference between news articles and opinion articles? Should a newspaper include both? What role does each play in a community? Again, these are going to be questions, that are going to whet the appetite for viewing that part of the video. And then discussion questions all have those timestamps on it. So if a student is watching this on their own, if you didn't finish in class and some of it needs to be for homework, they can, get to that. This is the 8-minute mark. And this one says, describe the processes. Sorry, it's hard for me to read. You see in the newspaper. What do you notice about the news gathering process and how stories are selected and finalized? And since we're NLP, we also included some of our News Literacy Project resources, such as this one, the Standards of Journalism infographic. And they can go and look, you know, are the newsrooms using multiple sources? Are they including recognizing their biases? Is it fair? Is it balanced, right? What of these standards are being addressed? And then we can get to the post-viewing part. And this post-viewing activities return to the essential questions raised prior to viewing and seek to extend student engagement with local journalism. So here we have the graphic organizer. You can use the think, pair, share strategy. And then students can just increase their engagement, right? So they're revisiting that same anticipation or anticipatory set, but hopefully can answer a little bit in more depth. And let's go to the next one. And this is just a zoom in of another additional activity of post-viewing. We have, I think, 4 different options. This one is to create a news log, right? And then this one, they're going to commit to reading, watching, or listening to a news source for a week and keep a log of what they've read, viewed, or listened to. In part 1, they're going to gather their news data. In part 2, they'll evaluate how the source covers their community, what stories they found worthwhile, and how the news source can improve or increase its readership. So they're keeping track, right? And in part B, they just have to really think about the news sources that they are they're consuming. So there's just a 6 big questions, like what role does this what role does this news source play in your community, right? So they're just digging deeply into their own personal consumption. And the next one, and this is just a quick preview of our 4 different options for action plan extensions to get students. And here we're talking about that civic engagement we all addressed at the very beginning of why this film is so powerful and the need for more civics engagement. Here are 4 ways that we can do that by extending the film. And I already mentioned this, but I just want to preview this to you for when you get this guide, the editable version. You just click on those editable versions. You can make copies and edit them, because as a former teacher myself, I know how nice that is. And that's it for the preview of the guide.
Thank you so much, Pam. All right, so Jill, can you share a couple of ideas you might have on how to apply this, how you might use it? Go ahead, please.
Yeah, I do have some suggestions and some ideas. As a practicing educator, one of the things that I think is always the case with materials that teachers can use for free from the News Literacy Project is how well this curriculum guide can both be used as one continuous unit that would take, a week or so, 3 to 5 to 7 days, but it's also so really well designed, Pam, so that each of the pieces can also just sort of, as a teacher, when you have time to really dig in, and sometimes you don't. And so the individual pieces of this are so great. The news log is my favorite, just FYI. I think what really works so well is that it this guide overall not only introduces kids to their local media and dials them into their local journalists at a time when misinformation and disinformation is is so rampant in our society, but it also humanizes journalism for them through Art and his family and all of the, sort of inherently altruistic work that they do in their community. So I love that aspect of it. As far as actual concrete point-to-able places where you can use this curriculum, and obviously it would lend itself well to a journalism course, of course, right? And I think what it would serve to do so well there is to really kind of inspire kids to see the impact of journalism, particularly at the local level. And the reason I bring that up is because I also want to give a little plug to some of the other features that the News Literacy Project has available to educators that you might not know about. And one of them is the Newsroom to Classroom program. And so what that does is it's just this wonderful thing that the team at NLP has put together where high school teachers, and not just high school teachers, but teachers at whatever level can tap into journalists in their local area, in their regional area, or national journalists to bring them into their classrooms. And so you could, as a practicing educator, you could use that platform to, first of all, get your kids to recognize who's doing journalism in your local area, but then also bring those journalists in. And it's really tailorable to your needs for what you'd like to have as sort of the topic of conversation. So that's kind of a parallel thing that's available through the News Literacy Project. I also really appreciate that the curriculum guide brings in some of the other things that are that are already in existence that maybe educators don't know about, and maybe, sort of the splash of making this documentary available and curriculum guide is that some of the other really amazing, useful things from News Literacy Project can also come in. I definitely wanted to talk about the thing that you already talked about, Pamela, which is that really great graphic about 7 standards of quality journalism. I think that's just such a great foundational piece. But I also think that it's applicable in using this curriculum guide and using some or all of this education cut, or whatever you're going to call it, of the documentary, super applicable in other areas as well. I think, it's a strength for sure that it's aligned so strongly with the Common Core student standards in ELA literacy, but it's also aligned to like the history, social studies standards. And arguably, I think it's also aligned with the science standards. We actually do a project in my school with our Earth Space Science class that heavily relies on sources of information. And we use lateral reading and all of those things that go hand in hand with this project. I don't know that I would show this documentary in a science class, but the strength is that, if you're teaching kids these foundational skills of sourcing, of evaluating sources of information, that there's like there's a cross-cultural bang for your buck. Big John, whatever his last name was, that he was like, that's just gravy on your taters. It's like that, right? If you're teaching it across the curriculum. So I was originally and am still a certified social studies teacher, and I can really see this documentary and the curriculum guide being like kind of a foundational piece in a survey course like our American Studies class that our freshmen take. One of the things about that a lot of social studies teachers do, particularly in a course that covers a broad span of time, like that kind of survey American Studies class, is a lot of times you'll spend like the beginning of the school year sort of setting your class norms and kind of your, here's kind of just teaching them how they're going to learn in that class. And I think that this documentary and the curriculum guide would be a perfect match for that context as well, because studying history is so much bringing in primary source documents, factual reporting, like what the Storm Lake Times does. And so giving kids that foundation in recognizing and being able to interact in depth and with substance with firsthand local reporting is going to prime them well, I think, for the kinds of things that they would be asked to interact with, the kind of texts that they would be asked to interact with over the course of a class like that. I think those were the ones I wanted to say, except I would make one last note. As an Iowan, I would totally vote Art Cullen for Senate, just FYI. It's not too late, Art. It's not too late.
Just great. And Jill, I do want to mention, if you don't mind, what you shared with me earlier today, how this movie impacted you so strongly.
It did.
30 seconds.
Sure. I already told Art before we got on live, but so I was not prepared emotionally for the impact that this film would have on me, because I actually grew up in a small town in Western Iowa. It was not Storm Lake, like I said earlier, but it could have been because we were a diverse, small community. There was a meatpacking plant as one of the main employers in my town. And as a kid, when I was in elementary school, my mother got a job as a part-time proofreader at our local newspaper. And then by the time I was in high school, she was the general manager. So many of the things that I watched Art and his family do in the film just like brought me back there. And the parallel I would make was, do you remember the scene in the movie Ratatouille when the food critic at the end takes the bite of the food and he's immediately like 8 years old sitting at a table with his mother? That was totally my experience watching this film.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Like a bad penny.
No.
That's fabulous. We only have a couple of minutes left. So before I switch to a couple of closing announcements, I'm going to ask Art, what do you think about this teaching guide that's accompanying the story of what you're going through?
Well, I might have said earlier, it just blows my mind. It's seeing the movie on the big screen was overwhelming for me, and this is almost hard for me to imagine. But it's really encouraging because I think this is where we have to build democracy. This is where we save our country. Is in the middle school and high school. This is where we restitch the fabric of our country, and Lord knows it needs restitching. And so I think it's just fundamental work, and what the teachers are doing. And I'm just, thrilled that it's going to be in these classrooms. And but it's just kind of absurd that I'm on the screen. That's all.
All right. Well, our entire staff is like sobbing in the background because of this, but thank you so much. It is really a great connection to make. And we appreciate what you do so much, and every educator out there, what you do. So I do want to share a overall thank you. Ebony, I'm not sure if you wanted to come on and say a few thanking words. We did want to acknowledge again the support of Microsoft for being able to make this possible, right? A lot of what we do, we're able to offer to educators for free because of our funders. And so we did want to thank you. The full length feature is coming up on PBS on April 16th. I believe, as Pam mentioned, we have a shorter version for educators, kind of segmented, that you can put into your classrooms a little bit more easily. I'll turn it over to Ebony now.
Wow, I was really not expecting this to be so emotional tonight. So thank you all so much for being here. Thank you to all of the educators that joined tonight. Miriam said this in her opening comments, but you all are really on the front lines in the fight against misinformation, and we don't take that lightly. We're so grateful to work with you, to serve you, to be able to provide the resources and supports that empower you to teach your students. That's our pleasure, to be able to do that, and really our duty and our charge. And so it's an honor. I just want to thank our partners at Storm Lake on behalf of NLP. I'd like to also thank Art Cullen, the Art Cullen, for being here with us. I feel like there's a celebrity in our midst, and when you run for senator, I will be sharing the photo of all of us here today, and I'll be like, yeah, I was there when he made the announcement. So that's going to be really fun. This has been so impactful, and I just wanted to offer a few more announcements before we transition away. So please expect, everyone in attendance, please expect a follow-up email with a code and free access for the next 3 months to Storm Lake and the educational viewing guide developed by NLP. We are so honored, thanks to our partnership, to be able to provide this access for our educators. So the full-length version is airing on April 16th, but you all will have access to the 1 hour, 60-minute feature length film that will be available on the website. So in a follow-up email, you all will get access to that. And we're so excited to be able to provide you that as an exclusive NewsLit Nation member perk and incentive for you. So if you're not a member of NewsLit Nation, run on over to newslit.org, click on For Educators. It's free, and we'll be so happy to have you join our movement. And then my last announcement is also something really exciting. Please join us tomorrow for an in-depth exploration of power and art, the watchdog role of editorial cartoonist. This week, we launched a new lesson on Checkology. If you've signed up for our insider newsletter, if you get any communications from us, you would have seen that already. The link is going to go in the chat for you to register for that. If you have not already, it's going to be amazing. Our content team will be there, as well as one of the experts who is featured in the Checkology lesson. It's amazing. I've seen it myself. It's going to be really fantastic. So I really want to encourage each of you to register and attend that event tomorrow. Please stay connected with us, join NewsLit Nation, get involved in the movement, and help us to preserve and save our democracy. Thank you all for coming, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. A pleasure.
Thanks for having me.
Such a pleasure, Art. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Before we stop the recording, I know there was one question left. Would love to have Art and Jill and everyone weigh on. And those that have to duck out early, please do so. But then I'll stop the recording. Wanted to ask this one, Miriam, if the market for news is trending to digital, how will Storm Lake and others meet that market? So again, this was not part of the regular program, but thought, oh, Art's still here. Let's ask his input before I stop the recording.
Yeah, that's the question, the $69 million question. And we're moving, the entire news industry is moving to digital, away from print, ultimately. But print still feeds the bulldog. It's still paying the bills for us. But as I cited, the New York Times now derives more in reader revenue than it does in advertising revenue, and similar things are happening at Boston and Minneapolis. The question is, in rural America, is the potential audience large enough to sustain a reader revenue model, a reader-driven model, recognizing that advertising has gone away pretty much? And we don't think so. I don't think there's a large enough potential audience in Western Iowa, for example, to support a lot of small independent newspapers. Maybe us, because we're in a town of about 15,000 people. But in that town of 2,000 people, it's getting really, really tough. And that's where philanthropy comes in. And I think that's going to be part of the business model going forward. That's why we started the Western Iowa Journalism Foundation, was for that very reason. Before the pandemic, we could see the freight train on the tracks. And so it's going to take philanthropy at least to get us through this digital transformation. And then we're going to have to see whether the potential circulation revenue, that is subscription revenue, is great enough. Can we compete with the New York Times for that reader's attention? And are there enough of those readers still living in rural America where it's not easy to make a living? So that's the real question.
That is interesting. I come from one of those towns, Art, the Conrad Record. When I was teaching, we were actively, as a high school English teacher, contributing regularly, and probably about halfway during my classroom career as an educator, it poof was gone.
Right.
So I was one of those small town readers who no longer has a paper.
God bless you.
Yeah. All right.
Great. Miriam, any last words here before I stop the recording?
I just want to welcome everybody. If you haven't yet joined NewsLit Nation, go to newslit.org and click on the For Educators portion, and that'll take you to NewsLit Nation, and you can register there. And then that way you're going to be able to receive our monthly newsletter, which is going to keep you posted with all the breaking news that we have and things that are coming up. And also that's our hub, right? All our resources are through there, access to our ambassadors across the country. Thank you, Jill, for being here. Speaking of ambassadors, yeah, everything you need that we can do to support you in your teaching, you'll find through there. So thank you for your time. Thank you for what you do, and stay strong, everyone.